Hey guys, listen up. This is serious. This is getting very, very serious because what I'm going to talk about means that by September next year, September 2023, I am not going to be able to do what I'm doing right now. What I'm doing right now is just going for a little shopping errand in the BCG BMW E30. Check it out, hashtag BCG BMW E30. It's my 1989 BMW 325i SE. Would you not agree? A modern classic. This is what this car is, and you can find out all about why I've got it, what I'm doing with it, if you go over to browncarguy.com or look at the videos on this channel. The problem is, where I live just outside the North Circular, which at the moment is fine, because this car, because of the emissions or requirements of ULEZ, ultra low emission zone, I cannot take this car into central London without paying a daily charge. So the moment I enter that zone, I have to pay £12.50 for the day, and that's every day, 24 hours a day, I think, apart from Christmas Day. So it's the case. At the moment, I don't mind. I can go around the North Circular as long as I don't turn in towards London. I'm fine. It's not an issue. And I don't actually commute to work or anything like that, so I'm not actually using it that much. So that all works fine. The problem is that brother Sadiq Khan, you know, who I really want to support him because he's like a brother from another mother, but he's such a car hater. I just can't bring myself to support him. He is now looking at proposals of initiating ULEZ all the way up to the M25. So that's covering the whole of London, Greater London, right up to Outer London, up to the M25 from the 29th of August next year. Now, some of you know, I just got this car, barely had it 2 months, and I'm reliving my youth with this car because I used to have one of these way back. And now this is a precious thing, you know, now it's a classic, now it's something rather special, but, you know, still quite an extraordinary and wonderful thing to have. I've only had it 2 months, planning to keep it, but I think I might have to revise that plans, because if that goes ahead, then I either have to move or get rid of the car. Because, okay, maybe you could pay the occasional £12.50, but every time I leave my car park, I would have to pay £12.50. That's ridiculous. Now, here's the thing about this, why we've got to think about it. I'm not altogether against the idea of reducing congestion and pollution and all of these issues in urban areas, in congested central urban areas, and there is no doubt that it's had an impact, and a positive impact, in central London to an extent, particularly with people's health, and that is very important. I am a parent, I am a family guy, that's very important to me. But the things to consider, that's central London, this is outer London, and what he's got to realize is that, okay, yes, we have congestion, yes, we have pollution, but it's not as intense or as bad as it is in the tightly packed central London areas. You know, we're much more, like I'm driving around here, there's hardly any cars right now. You know, it's a very different experience. Also, you need cars in this part of London. When you come to outer London, yes, we still have a transport system, but it's not as well developed or as well integrated or as easy to use as it is in central London. So certainly, like for short trips like this, you know, I mean, I'm going up to like the supermarket, I need a car. If I was to do this by bus, it would take me an hour and a half. I have to change buses twice. It doesn't make any sense, you know. Also, in central London, people tend to be a little bit more affluent if they're actually living there. If they're living in outer London, they won't necessarily be as affluent. Now, what you want is for people to get electric cars and hybrid cars, and particularly electric cars is what he wants people to do, right? Let's be honest, the trouble with electric cars is that they're still expensive. They're generally considerably more expensive than their petrol or diesel equivalents. Let's cut out diesel, that's going away anyway. In terms of price parity, we're not going to be seeing that until most people predict 2025 at the earliest. You know, we're getting there, we're getting closer. Cars are becoming more accessible. Electric cars are selling more than they ever have. Now he's talking about, okay, let's help people out with the scrappage scheme. Two things about the scrappage scheme. First of all, it's what, £2,500 or so? That's not going to help you get into a brand new electric car or even a used electric car. They're still holding their values very strongly right now. I'm going to come back to that as well. And so right now is not the time to be looking at new and used cars. They're very expensive, difficult to get hold of in terms of new cars, and very expensive in terms of used cars. Secondly, the other thing you got to think about the scrappage scheme is that isn't it just a case of wastage? The last time we really initiated a massive scrappage scheme, we saw so many great older cars which were still serviceable, which still had a lot of life left in them, were unnecessarily scrapped. And you think, well, you know, it's all about pollution and stuff like that. Okay, yes, but what we are not, I think, taking into account is the dust to dust environmental impact of a car. What is also established and is on record, and you can research it, is that the longer a car is in use, the more environmentally friendly it is, because the amount of resources that is used to create that car, the longevity of that car means that over 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, it's actually quite efficient because we're getting so much usage out of it. And then of course a lot of the car is then recyclable if it hasn't actually corroded away by that time. The other thing to consider is that is it really worth doing, because London has the highest density of newer aged cars, and generally the age of cars now for most people is up to about 7-8 years on average. That's the average car. So really what are you trying to do? You're just trying to get rid of the few cars that are older, which basically belong to the few people that cannot afford to run newer cars, which is extremely unfair. And again, when you look at what's happening right now with the cost of living crisis and the issues with everybody's having with money, and they're talking about MOTs every 2 years. I mean, how's that going to help when you're just going to get rid of all the cars? People won't have any cars to get around. You're basically restricting people's freedom of movement, people's freedom and ability to move around, and basically they can't afford to, because everything's going to become too expensive as it is already happening. So now when it comes to classic cars, that's a whole different scenario altogether. The thing is, there is an exemption for classic cars, but the exemption is 40 years. Now, would you not agree that a lot of great cars from the 80s and 90s are now becoming collectibles like this one, and are becoming known as modern classics? Even some of the stuffy classic car events like the Salon Privés and people like that are accepting these cars now, and actually they've got a term for them. They call them the young timers, but they're definitely in that modern classic car category. So this is extremely unfair on cars from the 80s and 90s, which are basically going to be, well, they want them to be scrapped. But what's really going to happen is they're going to be sold off, and they're going to end up in collections where they're not used, or just basically they're just mementos. That's what's going to happen ultimately. So, and that's really out of order, because at the moment you see so much joy and happiness just from driving this around. People see it, they like it, they wave, they're excited to see it. It brings back memories and all of this sort of stuff. So what are you doing here? This is not right. I know that I'm personally biased, and I'm personally unhappy because I want to be able to drive this car well into the next few years whilst I still live where I live. But in addition to that, look at what you're doing. Look at the classic car industry itself, worth billions, and it is a major industry in the UK. At a stroke, you're going to be trying to get rid of the classic car industry. I mean, what are you doing? This is not the right thing to do. And what I would suggest to all of you, this is very important right now. There is a link. I'll put the link in the description, etc, etc. Go and hit it, and there you can give your views. It's open to the public right now. They're consulting the public. You can go there, you can give your views and tell them what you really think of it. And so maybe we can change the direction of this thing. If we have to go down this route, what I would say is that can we please extend the classic car classification to 25 years plus? So because let's be honest, most older cars that people are using, that are polluting and people are generally using all the time, are going to be up to 20 years old. You want people in cars that are less than 10 years old, right? So you really want to get rid of those cars. Anything beyond 25 years is essentially a classic car, is a cherished car, is something special that's probably not going to be used that much, isn't going to make that much of a difference. So at the very least, can we look at that classic car classification, as well as just basically, I don't think this ULEZ scheme needs to be extended all the way till the M25. Think about how much area that covers. That covers a lot of area. The M25, I mean, that's a lot of people are going to be affected by that. So anyway, guys, act on this now. This has to be looked at. This has to be taken seriously. Hit that link, go and leave your thoughts there, and yeah, let's try and steer this in a different direction.
A big shout out and thanks to Jay Williams over at AirTechnic, who are top tier sponsors of Brown Car Guy. Check them out at AirTechnic Co UK for exhausts, brakes, suspension and body kits. Plus our other major sponsor, Nayagen Solutions. Much appreciation also to tier 4 sponsors, Muhammad Ali Humaid, Tom Conway Gordon and Reza Adil. And of course all these other guys who supporting on Patreon. Brown Car Guy is eternally grateful. Hey, think about joining them over at Patreon.com Brown Car Guy. If you can't, don't worry. Just make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and website. Plus follow on social media by searching for Brown Car Guy.